Good afternoon, World HRD Congress, and good afternoon, friends and colleagues. As was mentioned, my name is Kristopher Newbauer. I am currently the chair of the board of directors for the International Accreditors for Continuing Education and Training, which is headquartered out of Washington, D.C., and I also serve as chief people officer and head of global people and talent for Rotary International, which hopefully many of you know, Rotary worked very closely with the World Health Organization to announce the eradication of polio here in India in 2014. Some of you may not be familiar with the International Accreditors for Continuing Education and Training, which we refer to as IACET by its acronym. But you may be familiar with something that it created. Have you ever heard of the Continuing Education Unit, CEU? This is an organization that created the CEU. I'll tell you a little bit more about IACET as we proceed in the session today. In addition to that, I've served as chair of the Convention Program Advisory Committee for the Association for Talent Development in Washington, D.C., which was formerly known as the American Society for Training and Development. In that work, in 2017, 2018, and 2019, I had the opportunity to meet President Barack Obama and Oprah Winfrey, a media mogul in the United States and around the world. I also taught in graduate courses in 2 state universities in Illinois, one at Northeastern Illinois University and the other at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. And as was mentioned, I was very proud to be honored as the Human Resources Professional of the Year in the United States for 2024 by On Conferences, which is an organization similar to World HRD Congress, but it's multifaceted in that it involves professionals, executives really, from all facets of business, whether it be marketing, public relations, human resources, finance, you name it. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit about this idea of trust, this concept of trust. Trust is something similar to perhaps maybe love. Like we all kind of know it, but can we ever really truly explain it? And what does it feel like? Trust in an era of artificial intelligence, generative AI, and in a time where we're bombarded with fake news on social media and perhaps even some of the press, it becomes really difficult traversing this really complex world of ours when we don't know what is true and what's not, when we don't know what can be trusted or who can be trusted and what can't. And so I want to talk a little bit about how we decipher between what can be trusted and what can't be trusted, and really the process that we go through in making that decision. So what I would like you to do is, whether you trust them or not, talk to the person next to you for a couple of minutes talking about what is trust. How do you know when you have it? What does it look like or what does it feel like? And then what I would like you to do is think of at least one word that's not trust that explains or describes trust. So go ahead and have a conversation with your neighbor. Yeah, I would like you to talk with someone at your table about what is trust. What does it look like? What does it feel like? How do you know when it exists? Yeah. How are we doing? Have we solved the issue of trust? Does everyone know exactly what it is and how to explain it? And now you're experts in trust? Perhaps not, but at least we're starting the conversation to think about what trust is and what it might look like or what it might feel like. So, those of you who came up with one word to sort of describe or explain trust, shout it out. Tell me some words that you came up with. Being vulnerable. Perfect. We're going to talk about vulnerability. And thank you for being vulnerable and sharing. Loyalty. Faith? Commitment? Transparency? Outcomes? What else? That's it? Let me share some words that I came up with. Confidence, faith in something. Reliability, assuming that if you go to Starbucks one time and you go back again, that you will have the same level of service and receive the same sort of thing. You trust the brand. Assurance, assurance that you can feel okay with whatever it is that you're about to engage in or with whomever you're about to engage with. You believe in something. There's consistency and reassurance. So these are just some of the labels that we can sort of assign to trust to think about, well, what is trust? And so, coupled with this, I want us to think about something that perhaps may be even more difficult to understand, and that is, how do we form trust? How is trust created? So some people argue that trust takes time. You probably have heard this. Trust takes time. I need to get to know someone. I need to do research on perhaps a conference before I invest in attending it. If I'm buying a new home or a new car, I might want to research the neighborhood or research the company that manufactured the car and the safety record. So some people believe that trust takes time. Others say that trust takes vulnerability. So what does that mean? The people who think that trust takes vulnerability don't really prescribe to the idea of time. That you need to trust people right away or not. But how do you know when you can trust someone? We're going to talk a little bit about that. But just out of curiosity, how many of you are in the time camp? Trust takes time. Raise your hand. Okay? How many of you think you fall towards vulnerability? Trust requires vulnerability. Okay, not quite half and half, a little more on the time side than the vulnerability side. How many of you have ever flown an airplane? How many of you have ever flown in an airplane? How many of you got to the gate and said, I'd like to sit with the pilot for 5 or 6 hours to get to know them, to determine whether or not I can trust that they're capable of flying this plane? Anyone? So you get on the plane without even knowing who the pilot is. You don't know their name, because that doesn't happen until after you already got your seatbelt buckled. You don't know how many flight hours they have. You don't know where they went to school. You don't know how long they've worked for the airline. You know nothing about them, but immediately you trust this pilot literally with your life. This is what we mean by vulnerability. But that doesn't just happen magically. There must be a reason why you trust this pilot. There must be something that your instinct or your gut tells you, I can get on this plane and I can trust this pilot. Airline credibility, the stability of the airline, the safety record of the airline, the brand reputation, all of those kinds of things. In all of this, the importance of trust and being vulnerable is so that we as human beings and employees or colleagues know how to make better choices. Think about how complicated the world has become. The more we industrialize, the more choices we have to make. There's no longer just one model of a Ford car that people can buy in one color. There are so many different makes and models of cars today. How do you know which one to buy? How do you know which company to trust? How do you know which model to trust? How do you know which car dealership to trust? We have so many choices to make. Simply going into a grocery store and choosing one product, we now have to sort through a number of different options and figure out, well, which one of these am I going to choose? When we choose a restaurant that we've never been to, how do we trust that it's going to be good food? Especially when we're inviting others to join us. We don't want to let them down. We don't want them to be disappointed in the restaurant that we've chosen or the food that we're eating. So how do you build that trust in order to make better choices? So now what I'd like you to do is take a couple of minutes and talk with someone at your table about a time in the near past, so recently, that you were faced with the choice. What was the choice? And how did you determine whether or not you could trust either the person or the thing that you chose? Go ahead and talk with your neighbor. Would anyone care to be vulnerable and share with us the experience that you went through in making a choice and how you determined whether or not you trusted the person or the thing? Anyone care to share? Any people willing to be vulnerable in a room full of people you don't know?
So it's not so big. So I was just making a hotel booking. I've never been to where I'm going over the weekend. So the pictures looked nice, but I went to the reviews. I
Okay.
read about 50% of the 642 reviews, and most of them were good. So that's why I made that choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. That's a great example. And so, is this a future trip, or have you already gone on this trip?
It's a future trip. I'll call you on Monday.
Okay. So you still don't know if you can trust it. You think you can trust it, and we hope that you can trust it, but that's still to be determined. We'll see what your review says on Tuesday. Anybody else?
Yes, if I could share one from the same
Yeah.
table. Is
Yeah,
it
please.
allowed? Yes, so truly I'm very non-technical, though I work in the technology field. My son wanted to buy a pair of headphones. I completely trusted him because he went to 80 choices, gave me top 3 in an Excel sheet, and he's in the 12th grade. So he's an account student, so he gave me features, cost, and reviews. So I went with his choice. I blindly trusted him. Maybe it's a genetic or a mom concept, but that's what it is.
Okay. Nice. Thank you for sharing. We had someone up here who wants to share.
I think trusting somebody who you already do not know and do not have past credibility or track record, it's taking calculated risk. Are you prepared to take calculated risk and go with it? Now you do have a choice: trust or doubt, and then not make a decision. So I think to me, if you do not have the past history and no credibility, it's calculated risk that you're taking.
Completely agree. Yes, it's absolutely a calculated risk. And the challenge of us being human beings rather than artificial intelligence is that even though technology is as sophisticated as it is today, we are not as sophisticated. Biologically, we're still programmed to determine whether something will eat us or we will eat it. And so this concept of fight or flight still exists very much within our DNA. And so when we're making a choice, we have to decide, is this choice going to be dangerous to me, or is there going to be some at least hope for security and stability? So when we trust a pilot to fly the plane, that doesn't guarantee that we will arrive safely. But we take a calculated risk with the assumption that we're more likely to arrive safely than we would be in danger. Now, some people say that they have gut instincts or intuition. Oprah, in fact, is one of the people who says that always believe your instincts, because intuitions never lie. And she talked about when she was hiring people for her media business. She always knew within a few seconds. Now, as HR professionals, that makes us really worried, right? But she tells the story that when she was hiring people for her media company, she knew within a matter of seconds whether or not they were the right person for the position, because she went with her gut, her instinct, and she could just tell. Of course, she went through an interview and asked other questions that make me a little more comfortable. So when we make a choice, and in some of the examples that we heard, the way we do this is to make assumptions. We have to make assumptions. So in the example of the airline pilot, we had to assume that this pilot was qualified. We had to assume that you chose to buy a ticket from this airline because you're comfortable with how their safety record of this airline. Yesterday, I was having a medical emergency and I needed a doctor to come to my room. I didn't know the doctor. Even telling me the doctor's name did nothing to help me be reassured that he was credible or qualified. And I was having a serious medical issue, and I knew that I needed medical attention. And he came to my room, and I intrinsically trusted him. I took a calculated risk that this person knew what he was doing, and he was going to help me. And probably even more importantly, I was super vulnerable at the time because I needed someone, and he was better than no one. And so when he came to my room, I could tell that I wasn't even trying to invest the time in getting to know him. I needed him to help me, and I needed help right away. And he instead was taking the time to build a rapport with me. And so one of the things he shared with me was that he was a cardiologist in Boston, so he was making the connection with me to the United States and trying to reassure me that he practiced medicine in the United States, and he's very qualified, and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, that was all nice. That was a bonus to me. But I trusted that this doctor was someone who, someone from the conference got connected with me, and I trusted that that person was the right person to help me in the moment. And in doing so, I made assumptions. I made an assumption that the person I talked to at the conference would not refer me to a doctor that wasn't going to help me. I made an assumption that the doctor had experience with what the issue was that I was having. And I made the assumption that they were going to help me rather than harm me. So what sort of assumptions do we make when we're determining whether trust takes time to build or trust takes vulnerability to build? One assumption is the test of time. So for example, Rotary International, and hopefully all of you in this room have heard about Rotary, was founded in 1905. So we've been around for 120 years doing good in the world, and here in India as well. Rotary has lasted the test of time. That's a brand that people should be able to trust because they know it. The longer a company is in business, the longer track record they have, and the more information you have about whether or not this is a good company. Another assumption are scores. We heard somebody reading the reviews. So you might look to see how many stars does this restaurant have, or how many stars does this hotel or resort have. So you're looking to see, well, what are other people saying about it, and how is it being reviewed? Now, the danger, especially in the advent of AI, is that sometimes these can't even be trusted, even when they're being made by other human beings. Because sometimes companies are offering discounts or free products in order for you, in exchange for you to leave a favorable score. But it is at least one metric for an assumption that we can make. Another is word of mouth. So maybe you hear others talking about it. Maybe you're passing through the halls of the conference and you hear somebody mention a really good restaurant that has the best butter chicken in Mumbai. And you think, okay, that sounds nice. I'll go try that. So perhaps word of mouth is an assumption that you can trust this restaurant, even though you don't even know the person who made the recommendation. Perhaps notable staff. Perhaps they have people on their team that you know are respected and are fully capable and credentialed in what they do. Perhaps their reputation. And sometimes even alliances. So an airline is a good example. Air India is part of the Star Alliance in the airline industry, along with United Airlines in the United States. So the assumption is that good people hang out with other good people. So when you have alliances, if someone is associated with someone that can be trusted or with a company that can be trusted, the assumption then becomes, well, they must be trustworthy also. So why am I talking about all of this? Yes, I wanted to start this session talking about trust from a human perspective, but now I want to talk a little bit about what we need to do as HR professionals to ensure that we have the trust of our employees, the trust of our colleagues, the trust of our applicants, and that we're doing all of these things for our companies. So what we do and how we behave as HR professionals of our employer is a reflection on that employer brand. So we have the capability of either increasing or jeopardizing the reputation of the company for which we work. And unfortunately, HR often gets a bad reputation. So it's our work to try to change that. How do we demonstrate to people that HR isn't the bad guy? How do we add greater value? So I've been serving as Chief People Officer of Rotary International and the Rotary Foundation since 2017. So several years now. When the CEO of Rotary International asked me to take over that responsibility, I initially said I refuse to lead any function called human resources. And that was pretty confusing to him. HR is what it is. It's always been human resources ever since, well, since personnel. It was personnel, then it was human resources. Why would we not call it human resources? And I believe very strongly, and we heard in a session earlier, in the power of language. Human resources, from my perspective, is referring to a person as a resource. And I don't see people as resources. Resources are the things that we use to generate value. A stapler is a resource, a filing cabinet's a resource, a desk is a resource, all of those, computer, all of those things we use to do our jobs to make or generate value for our employers. So I agreed to take the job as long as we would change not just the name, but the philosophy of how we approach our colleagues at Rotary International, and I would be the head of global people and talent. And so that's why we're not called human resources. We're called global people and talent. And the work that we've done since 2017 is to lead the way to an extraordinary employee experience. Because I strongly believe that it's important for us to build trust with our colleagues, but also to demonstrate the importance and reputation of our brand as an employer. For every open job that we have at Rotary, we have upwards of thousands of applications, people wanting to come work with our organization. That's largely because of the number of people who are looking for jobs, but it's also a testament to the kind of people who want to come and work for us. The problem is, for every one person we hire, there's 999 that we can't. So how do you still create a relationship with them so that maybe sometime down the road, they might want to come back as an applicant and join us in the future? Hopefully, they trust the hiring process. So we heard about the importance of transparency. The more transparent we are about the hiring process and letting candidates know where we are in the process, that can build trust. Being honest is a really important element of building trust. So from an institutional level, though, I want to talk to you a little bit about this idea of being accredited. And what does that mean? So when people are not familiar with your organization, or they don't have experience with your company, they might look to see if other people do, or if other people can validate that you're legitimate. And so let's talk a little bit about accreditation. Accreditation, first and foremost, is an attestation of quality. It's someone saying, I confirm that this is a good organization, or this is a good company. It's awarded to an entity by a neutral third party. So it's not a biased party. It's an organization that validates the work that the accredited organization does. It's based on adherence to a standard. So the standard is basically a process that means that organizations who are accredited by this organization, this accrediting body, follow. So whether you go to one hospital or to another hospital or to a third hospital, if they're all accredited by the same agency, the assumption is that they follow the same standard. They have the same principles of quality. It's a rigorous application process. So it's not just pay for play. You actually have to demonstrate to the accrediting body that you actually meet or exceed the requirements of the standard. It also involves a comprehensive review. So for universities and hospitals, for example, they often have a site visit where auditors will come to the job site and they will conduct a comprehensive review to take a look at what you actually are doing and compare it against what you're supposed to be doing according to policies. So what are the benefits? It shows you mean business. It shows you mean you're serious about what you do and you take it seriously. It gives you a competitive edge, an advantage over other companies who do similar work. If I have to choose between company A and company B, how do I choose? How do I know which company to trust more? Perhaps if one of them is accredited and another is not, I may go with the organization that's accredited. It allows you the opportunity for benchmarking. As I mentioned earlier, every organization who is accredited is held to the same standard. So if you're interested in becoming accredited, what you do is take a look at the standard and see where are there any gaps? What do I need to do to improve between where things are now and what's required by the standard? And that allows you to do external benchmarking with what other world-class accredited organizations are doing. It also assists with succession planning. This one's important because accreditation stays with the organization, not the person. So when you leave, this accreditation requires that everything is documented and that gets passed on to the people who follow you. It also improves scalability. So what's the difference between accreditation and certification? The biggest difference is that accreditation happens at the entity level. An organization is accredited. Accreditation usually takes a look at policies, procedures, and processes. It requires an audit to be conducted. The outcome, if accreditation is awarded, is some sort of seal, some sort of validation that you can either hang on the wall or display on your website to demonstrate that you're accredited. And it's company specific, so it stays with the company. Whereas certification is awarded to individual people. It's based on what they know or what they're able to do, so competency and knowledge. It usually requires a test or exam to measure your abilities. It results in the issuance of a credential. So for example, I hold several credentials, one of which is the Certified Professional in Talent Development. And it's person specific. So that certification is awarded to me and it stays with me, whether I am at Rotary or I leave to go to another company. The certification follows me. So another example of this. I mentioned that I work at Rotary. Rotary is accredited by the International Accreditors for Continuing Education and Training. And the seal that Rotary is awarded is this accredited provider seal to demonstrate to our learners that our organization is accredited and they can trust the training that they get from us. So the question is, why did we pursue this? Well, I worked with our finance team to find out where are we spending money for our employees to go to training? And what's different about them than the internal training that we're offering to our employees? And what we found was that more of our employees were going to training programs that were accredited by IACET. We were not. So we thought, well, we'll get accredited so our employees will see that we are just as high quality as what they can expect to get outside of our four walls. And we've been accredited since 2009 by IACET. I mentioned that I have a certification from the Association for Talent Development, which is the CPTD, and so I have this credential that I can put at the end of my name. Both of these are renewable, so the accreditation lasts for 5 years, and then you have to re-accredit, and the certification lasts for 3 years, and you have to earn continuing education units to renew. So just a real quick note about IACET, in case you're interested in learning more. The mission of IACET is to accredit providers around the world that deliver quality learning and inspire continuous improvement, and our vision is a world that learns better. We have over 600 accredited providers around the world. They include publicly traded corporations, privately held businesses, not-for-profit organizations, and even governmental agencies. So you may recognize some of the logos on this wall. These are just a snippet of the organizations that are accredited by the International Accreditors for Continuing Education and Training. So hopefully, these are companies that you can trust, because the assumption of making that choice is that IACET has done the guessing work for you. IACET has gone in and determined that these companies are doing the right thing in terms of training and development. You'll notice that some are outside of the United States. The Saudi Arabia Water Academy, United Arab Emirates Ministry of Interior, actually their police academy, and IBIS, Academy of Higher Education here in India. So if you want to learn more, I invite you to visit www.iacet.org, download our complimentary accreditation readiness calculator. If you want to pursue either accreditation or you just want to bring your internal training standards up to the same standard as accredited providers, you can purchase the standard and application bundle. And if you decide that you want to pursue accreditation, you can register for an upcoming workshop or additional training. So thank you very much, and I hope you'll join me in our pursuit to make a world that learns better. Thank you.